Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Dancing with life. I know that when we begin our spiritual path, there is, for many people, this sense of upliftment and bliss and peace, and you just can't stop wanting to tell people about it. I love when those people come and find us at Unity, and they're so excited about the message of Unity. And then, as we've been in Unity or on your spiritual journey for a while, things can kind of level out. And they can plateau, and it can feel like, what happened to that joyful dance that was happening in the beginning? Now it feels like the rubber's hitting the road, and it's a little more, can be stressful or tried or just like even tenuous feeling of it. I don't feel the presence of spirit like I did. So we're going to talk about that today. The middle of the journey. This is part of Deepak Chopra's teaching from the third Jesus and how we can dance in the middle of the journey. Have you ever wanted to know how far along you are in your spiritual path? Like, just kind of get a gauge, like, am I close to enlightenment? Am I kind of in the beginning? Come on, just kind of getting an idea. If I'm really far behind, give me a nudge or something. And there's that question, how far along really am I? And it's not discernible by time and effort. Oh, we wish that it could be. In school, we know our grade level. We can say, okay, now I'm in second, I'll be in third, I just complete these assignments and this coursework, take these tests, and I'll be in third. But spiritual life isn't like that. How do we know how much we've evolved? We think the spiritual path is about finding peace or finding yourself or ending suffering. But the path isn't about just feeling better, which is wonderful, feel better. It's not just about that. It's about a profound transformation that happens within. There are teachings, spiritual teachings, that are called translative teachings, which offer you opportunities to change things out in the outer part of your life, which are wonderful. Get the house, the car, the money, the job. That's usually where many of us start on the spiritual path, and where we find a connection to that. Oh, I'm getting my life in order. And there's this also transformative opportunity that's available where those outer things become less important than your awareness of God and the development of God within you. Jesus fully embodied this transformation and this reality. And it's the transformation to God consciousness which Deepak is leading us into through this understanding of the third Jesus as us, and that consciousness transforming and evolving in each of us. So here we are in the middle of the journey, and the book is almost over. We've got one more week with the book, and Reverend Karen's going to tell us next week how we ascend. And yes, that'll be the last step. So our experience after first stepping on the path, when we felt the highs of insight and awakening, that our experience as a spiritual being becomes more subtle and constant because now we've integrated those energies. It's not like, oh, this is something else I'm experiencing that's different from me. It's becoming you, right? So we recognize that we've changed. And our responses to our spiritual growth can have a wide range. And Deepak tells us that they can express in this way. I'm living from the level of my soul, recognizing, and I've stopped living from the outer effects or the personality. I'm living from the level of my soul. I don't have much attachment to my ego. I'm finding my own truth rather than the truth that's been imparted to me. I'm discovering it through my own insight and discernment. There's more love in my life, and I'm better able to receive it. I'm changing my old conditionings and my addictions, and now I can remember who I really am. So those are the responses that we have to spiritual growth and how we know ourselves through that journey. And while we can really be eager to progress spiritually, and there can be an expectation, hey, I show up on Wednesday nights, I take classes, I come and meditate, or whatever your practice is. There's a desire. Deepak says it's not possible to feel that you're growing every minute, that you're just not going to feel that every minute you're growing and you're expanding and learning and ascending and all that. That it doesn't happen like that. That there are times when we can feel that there's no growth happening, like it feels like a fallow time. And you can lose focus, you can become discouraged. And you can even experience setbacks. And some people even find themselves returning to addictions that they thought they had conquered. And they're finding a need to return to 12-step that they may have stepped away from. Because there's that feeling like, losing track, getting lost. There's a plateau, and maybe you feel like you can't get past it, and so you seek that support to work through that so you can move forward. The middle of the journey has both rewards and frustrations to it. There are rewards and there are frustrations. And Deepak tells a wonderful story to illustrate this, and it's about a very experienced Sufi teacher who had many great spiritual advancements until one day he experienced no light at all. It was like the light vanished. And this is how he expressed the experience, and see if you can relate to it. I was sitting at the breakfast table with my wife when the thought occurred to me, who is that? You ever think that? Who is that? I love my wife dearly, but at that moment I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I tried to shake the feeling, but without success. For a long time it was quite baffling, because I had assumed that I was making steady progress toward reaching God. But then I realized what was happening. It's like this. You work years to climb the mountain, you're nearly at the summit, and you see God's hand reaching down to you, figuratively, of course. Eagerly, you run toward it, and just as your fingers are about to touch God's, God says, have you forgotten something? It's a shock, because you realize at that moment that you made the summit by leaving behind all parts of yourself that you hate and are ashamed of. You didn't plan to take your secrets with you to God, but that is how it is. You must go back down and find the orphans and abandoned children who are crying in the dark. Not just your best self finds God, all of you does. Feel that. All of you. All those parts that you wish didn't show up. And always in the worst moments. Everyone meets resistance on the path. Why? Why? So Deepak gives us some of the reasons why we meet resistance. One of them is habit. You've just been doing things a certain way. You're in a relationship and you've come into a way of being with each other, and it could be dysfunctional. But that's just the way you know how to behave together, right? And then you have a new experience that tells you a different way to be. and it doesn't fit with the old way, and your mind resists it because there's a pattern that you've created that you know, and you cling to the old ways. So there's habit as one of the ways that we meet resistance. There's memory. Memory can be dangerous because you assume you know everything already on the spiritual path. And so the past, what you know to be true, overshadows the present, and you're not able to see the present because you're living from a knowingness of what worked in the past or what you knew to be true rather than what is. Guilt is the third one he gives us, that whatever experiences of your past that lead you to feel a sense of unworthiness can hold you back on your spiritual journey. So there's guilt. You are the one holding yourself back by not loving yourself and releasing that guilt. Self-worth is another one. He says that you can feel that new experiences are too good for someone like you. I went to a retreat once, and they were doing hands-on healing, and it was very beautiful. It was very peaceful, and the woman who was next to me got up, like in the middle of it, and she said, I feel too much joy. And I was, how could you feel too much joy? She just felt like she couldn't take any more. A feeling that new experiences are too good. Too good. I can't take that. Or when's the other shoe going to drop? There's repressed anger, sorrow, or grief. And these are old emotions that can show up, and they show up to be healed. And you may have not fully released them, and perhaps this is something that I've learned, mainly from my spiritual director, Robert Brummett, that your psyche wasn't available to heal at that moment because you were still so traumatized. But as you mature and in life, and you're separated some time and space from that event, you become more available to look at it again and to heal it. Otherwise, you push it down again. And pushing it down again, I don't want to look at that. I hate that part of my life. I hate that parent or teacher or whatever it was. I don't want to think about that, and push it down, and that's that repression that causes resistance on the path. Another one is loss of control, that you panic because there is an inner conflict, that you know this old way, there's a new way, and you don't know what the new way is going to be. So you feel like you're not in control of the situation, of your life, of your spiritual path. Loss of control. Next is skepticism and doubt. And has that ever showed up for you? Like, is this unity stuff really true? Come on. Where you doubt your faith. It's the rational mind that can't grasp that depth of spiritual truth. It refuses it. It refuses to accept your new experiences as spiritual or as deep as they are, as holy as they are, whatever. No. That's a bunch of spiritual hooey. And the last one is victimization, which is a pattern that we can live out where you're just used to disappointing people in life, you expect something bad to happen, and you have low expectations because then there's low risk. If you walk in low expectation, then if something happens, well, I knew that was going to happen. I knew not to get my hopes up. So these are all examples that Deepak gives us of resistance. And so it's a huge list, and how do we handle it? He says the key is simplicity. Simplicity. That when some negative reaction arises, any one of these or something else, to simply stop Just be with it. Be with it, feel it, notice it. And when you give yourself that time and space to do that, then you're at a place where you can make a conscious choice rather than reacting to it. You can make a choice to do something about it, to seek a therapist, to practice forgiveness, whatever it is, in response to what has arisen, to let it go. So, some of the choices that he offers are these. He said you could practice patient waiting, which is noticing the negative reaction, being with it, and being attentive to it without any judgment. Okay, anger shows up, I feel it in my chest, it feels hot, it feels fiery, it feels uncomfortable, and it's just a feeling, and I let it be. I feel the heat of it, the presence of it. I allow it to be, and notice that when you finally just feel the feelings of it rather than the story, you feel the feelings of it, it can move through your body rather than hang into your muscles and tissues. The issues are in the tissues. Feeling it. And that's one of the ways to deal with an obstacle. Another way is to talk out the problem to the problem. He says just any negative experience is just a part of you. It's actually a part of you. It's part of your psyche, your mind, consciousness. So just talk to the fear, talk to the hostility. Ask it what it means. Have a dialogue. It's just a part of you that got hidden away, that wants to be seen, it wants to be healed, wants to be heard. And the healing can only come with understanding. Another way is to dialogue, journal with it. Me and anger, or fear, or revenge, whatever it is that has shown up. And work through that without acting it out. That's a practice. It's a practice because it's changing. It's changing you and allowing transformation. You can ask the underlying energy to leave. I really liked this one because you could just have some negativity that's hanging on. You've heard what it had to say. You just ask it to leave. Be gone. Right. That energy is just stuck to a message that is in your consciousness. And so listen and then move the energy. And then finally, physically respond to it, which is to move the body. Go take a walk, go to the gym and work out. You can literally just shake your body. There's a wonderful vocal technique that I studied by a leader in acting voice training called Catherine Fitzmaurice, and she would have us lie on the floor like in baby pose and just shake, and it shook the tension out of our voices. I want to revisit that because it was very good, and releases old energies that we've held on to. Primal scream, easy, it's free, and powerful. I went on a retreat and somebody said to me, they're like, you're holding on to a lot of anger. You got to get that out of your body. Go out in the woods and scream. So I was like, are you going to hear me? Or is it going to bother? Nobody cares. Just go out there. And it was, and I had a massage and all kinds of things at this retreat, but that scream, just screaming and screaming and screaming, the birds didn't care, trees didn't care. It made a difference to me because it just got that energy out of my body. It just cleared it out. Residual stuff I had been hanging on to. Toning, which Joshua Ignacio will be doing some of that in his workshop coming up on the 15th, is just toning, making sounds, allowing to be low guttural sounds, high-pitched sounds, whatever sounds you want to make, and allowing it to go wherever you want it to go in the body, and let it out. And breathing, deep, deep breathing. These are just all physical responses that we can make as choices to respond to the resistance rather than taking action that can be harmful to yourself or others. So these are responses he says don't work. So we can cross those out when they show up. Okay, there it is, and I'm going to take a different action. Rationalizing. It's just a mood. I don't have time for this. So it shows up for healing. You say it's insignificant and you try to avoid it. But it is significant because after all this time, it's shown up to be healed. So it's significant and it's worthy to be heard. So rationalizing is one way we try to evade that process. Another is ego. So when you have feelings that show up that you don't approve of, he says not to say, I'm not a person who gets angry. I'm not a person who gets depressed. I'm not a person who cries. Whatever that is for you. He says, inside you are a reflection of the whole world. So all of the human experience, the whole spectrum of that lives in you. So you are that person who feels that. Yes. And he says rejecting your feelings only makes you numb and unresponsive to life. And so we don't want to walk around that way, being numb. And this is an obstacle that you need to remove. Allowing yourself to feel the feelings that you have. Timidity and fear. So negative energies are always connected to a memory, and they can be connected to a memory that you had as a child. And back when you were a child, you weren't equipped, perhaps, to face the loss, to face the fear, the grief, the anxiety, the loneliness. At that time, you had coping skills appropriate for your age, but not adult skills. Now you're an adult. And so when those feelings of timidity and fear show up, recognize that what you're experiencing now is only a shadow. It's not the thing that was when you were a child. It's a shadow of that. And now you can see it from a different perspective, and you have the tools. You have the tools to bring that healing that perhaps weren't available to you in your childhood. And finally, there's procrastination. Because negative energy never shows up at a good time, does it? It shows up in the middle of something that doesn't feel like, excuse me, I need to take a spiritual break and do a worksheet or whatever before I come back to this conversation. No, it shows up at an inconvenient time. And he says that if you wait until to deal with it at another time, you could take it out unintentionally on someone. And really they're only triggering what's been inside of you all along. And he says the healthiest way really to look at it is that it's all inside of you. It's all going on inside of you. And perhaps they have done something that was wrong and hurtful and intentionally demeaning or whatever it happens to be. But he says it's more productive to face the truth that all of our negative energy belongs to us and not to that person, because that's just projecting it outside of yourself. And so just really claiming it, because within you, you can do the work. You can't change somebody else. We know that. We know that. We can keep trying. We can pray for them, right? And pray. And you may notice that they change as you change, because we're mirroring each other. What feels like backsliding in the middle of the journey is actually a return to parts of yourself that need spiritual attention. So you can be gentle with yourself on that there is something that just needed some more healing and attention and love, that your perceptions are changing. I love how Unity minister Eric Butterworth says that we are spiraling in consciousness, and so we have, let's say, family dysfunction. We grow spiritually up the spiral, family dysfunction again, but we're at a higher level and see it differently. And we do some healing work, and then we move up, and they're spiraling upward, family dysfunction, but we're at a higher level. So we just keep learning, growing, and spiraling upward in consciousness. But knowing that as we're doing that, we keep moving into uncharted territory. So it can feel vulnerable. You can struggle with discouragement in that, and not knowing if you're on the right, taking the right steps. And he says there's a temptation to return to that life that you had before you had your spiritual path, whatever that was, when you just didn't know about Christ consciousness and freedom through knowing the truth and affirmations and all that, whatever that was, if there was that prior in your life or whatever, before you went deeper into your spiritual life or your calling, that you can be lured right back into it because it's known. It's known. He says you're experiencing all the things that Jesus told his disciples about. There's all those things that are in the Gospels that he preached about to allow them to be aware of what was happening in them as they unfolded God consciousness. In the middle of the journey, we exchange our material wants, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams for a single and undisturbed state where non-change is primary. Deepak tells us, non-change. So what does non-change feel like? Non-change is an experience of the mind where it stops being frantic, it stops being restless, it stops being obsessed with people or things. The attachment to material things is less. The us versus them stops being such an appealing dynamic to keep living out. Issues of social status, money, and possessions no longer seem important. So that's non-change. And I'll leave you with this. A famous guru was asked if enlightenment could be achieved quickly. And he said, yes, you could do it in 30 days, but only if 30 men held you down. Can you imagine that? If you were held down for 30 days by 30 men, wouldn't a lot of resistance come up? A lot of opportunities for forgiveness and releasing. So I thought that was really an interesting metaphor that he offered us about enlightenment, but that it seems like it could, if you had all of your stuff come to you in a very quick amount of time, you could reach enlightenment, but who wants all that all at once? So there's that thought. The middle of the journey invites us to take a giant leap into the unknown, knowing that the end of the journey is going to look nothing like the beginning that you left from. Namaste. Amen.
Whoa, that was a quick run through about 20 years of my life right there. Where all the different methodologies and all the different breathing and all of the different sob stories and all that stuff, which isn't to say it's over, and which isn't to say I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm here. And I just really remembered how much it takes of us, right, to let go of and to forgive. And I think I'm still stuck with, we don't take our best self to God. We bring all those little critters with us, all of those different ways of being. And that in this life, my practice has become more of recognizing when I can't rationalize it and I can't outthink it and I can't fix it and I can't go solve it, and then I realize I it's me. I have to live with it. And that's when my heart grows bigger. And I can just embrace it and just remember its story is not my story anymore. You know, the story of this part of me is really here just to be loved, not changed, not fixed. You know, just here. And it helps me in a lot of other situations too. Only when I've given up on anything else that won't work, that's when I remember, I think this is the thing, you know.
Yeah. And I appreciate your referencing our stories. We interact with them as if they're so real. And it's like you said, it's all inside. You've said it before, and I was amused the first time I heard it, but and though you didn't actually say it tonight, I felt it, that will I always be in a state of transformation? Like, you know, it's sort of, we have these lofty values associated with transformation. So I don't want to damage that in any way. I just want to preserve that and let that spin in its own orbit for a moment. And just assert that most of our engagement with that idea, though, is rooted on a premise of, I got to fix this. That this is not it. That this has got to be transformed. It's got to be made better. And I don't think that that's bad. I would go so far as to say it's inherent in the part of me that needs to sleep every day and feed and eat and just sort of live, inhabit my human body. I'm reminded of what a good friend of mine says, that is, I'm more like a horse than I am an angel. Now, I'm not a horse and I'm not an angel, but most of my energy is spent making muck. And and my human condition is the gig. You know, it's not like I really appreciated what you brought in toward the end about non-change. I'm going to cling to that as that is our spiritual self, that is whole, perfect, and complete, and flawless. It was, it is, and it forever will be. No matter how creative my human body gets with how I interpret my experience, that part is untainted. And when I can identify with that part of myself, then my human condition kind of aligns accordingly, but I'm still a horse. I'm still more like a horse, you know, this part of me that has to dance with that eternal oneness that abides within me. It still bumps against other human beings, you know, and it still has these experiences of memory and habit and all the other things. I thought it was an action-packed talk. I mean,
Yes.
there was like,
Yes, it was.
wow, there's a lot of information there. But I also really valued reflection on the continuum of transformation. It is part of our human condition to forget and wake up, forget and wake up, and go take another cut at it, a different place in the spiral.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. There was a lot in that one meaty chapter, and he went into more of Jesus's teachings and some pretty difficult ones too, like about him saying you have to hate your mother, your father, your sister, and your brother in order to abide in me. And what is that? I mean, for us on our journey was, wait a minute, I thought Jesus said we need to love each other, love your neighbor, love your enemy, love everyone. And so Deepak was saying that's another shift as far as releasing old ways of being, to come into a new way. In order to abide, you've got to not hate. He was like, well, Jesus spoke very declaratively to make a point. Mm-hmm. He would use strong language, and who knows what the Greek words were, that were translated to English, and he spoke in Aramaic and all.
Right.
But that is really that letting go of the old way and coming into that new way of spirit, and detaching from the need of certain dynamics and even dysfunction and that kind of thing that he explains are human ways of being, and that there's a higher way. But yeah, that I love that image of the more like a horse. We keep getting in the muck, and then we take that all, as Karen was saying, we take that all to God, all the muck. Like, God is the whole spectrum of light and darkness. We try to say, well, God's this here, like all of it. And so that can be hard to fathom, I think. Right? But it's all.
I think the chapter is also very pragmatic. You know, it gave, you shared tonight, very specific tools. And everybody, of course, has their own experience of what you say and what we hear is a mystery to all of us. But what was a resounding moment in what you're sharing that I'm going to continue to ponder, and that is that if you've got this one going on, you really need to deal with it, and that is numbing. You know, like avoidance, and that's confronting. I don't know that I do that, but I think that it would be the most insidious, that if you were engaged in numbing, you wouldn't necessarily know. So you kind of have to pay attention to the symbols and the signals around you to get a better sense of it.
Well, our culture encourages it. Go on the phone, go on the game, go on the screen,
Yes.
VR.
Yes. Yeah.
Get out of the experience. Think something else.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, David, what you were saying about fixing, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is still wrong. I got to fix this, right? You know, like one more thing to turn over. And I really identify with that. It was what drove me. My journey started when my husband was in early recovery, and I was discovering what codependency was. And in learning about that, I thought I was the one that was whole and fixed. I showed up with a blank sheet of paper and a sharp pencil to take notes of how to get him sober and keep him there, you know, and realized that was in itself the dysfunction and the reason he was stuck someplace, right? Because I was helping him stay stuck by being in denial and not even knowing it. And so in the waking up of all of that, like I felt like I started below the tabletop. Like if you have an addiction, you can put it on the table and you can see, I'm addicted to that thing right there, right? Codependent, it's done with mirrors, you know, it's smoke and mirrors. So I stayed below the table. I had to climb up to the table to figure out what it even was before I could stop doing it, you know, or start doing something else. Yeah. And so in doing that, I started on a journey, and I was driven by that perfectionism that I think we have all agreed that we're all ones on the Enneagram. Am I right about that?
I don't know.
I think all three of us might be.
Okay.
Check it out for yourself.
Okay.
See, you know, but it's definitely that drive for perfectionism, and that I needed to be better and better and better. You know, it's like when something wasn't right, I had great motivation. I wasn't even paying it. It helped me with my codependency because I wasn't paying any attention to my husband anymore. Now I'm driven to get myself together. You know, I'm falling apart. I'm a mess. I didn't even know this was wrong, and so I was driving in my own process, which actually was a good thing. And that drive has really helped me to see that when something is uncomfortable, you were saying, you know, numbing out or whatever, I'm not comfortable with the discomfort anymore. And to the degree, it's like wiggling a tooth that needs to come out. You know, I wiggled and wiggled and wiggled and until it would come out, and I wouldn't sleep until because I couldn't be with it, you know. It needed to go. And so the same thing is true. If something is bothering me, I really want to pay attention to it. I really want to listen. And now I have tools that I've accumulated to do that, so I can return to peace a lot sooner in my life. And sometimes without third-party help. And I would hold that out if we're all in a different part of the journey, you know, and recognize that for yourself. You'll slowly emerge into the light where you're really okay. You're really doing well, and things aren't always perfect, and they're not always right. But there's a part of you that suddenly can pivot and can balance and can find another way, and you know where you can find help. You know who's wiser than you. You know, I think.
I think I have time to make one more observation, and it dovetails in what you were saying, Karen. I appreciated the distinction of one of the tools for coping or for transforming negativity, negative thoughts that come our way, is to simplify. That was useful. And then later, you said something about, and a pitfall to avoid is minimize. I don't think you, maybe you even used that exact word, but it was one of the avoidance techniques, and I thought, now that's an interesting distinction. Simplify, distinct from minimize. That is useful to me, because that's like bite size. I can apply that in various circumstances, and really call myself out on minimizing, numbing it. It's like, no, I'm going to just keep this right in front of me here, but I'm also going to do the next right thing, and the next right thing, and in other words, simplify. And I think eventually I'll get a toehold at first, and then maybe a stride. Such a rich subject, such a rich presentation of ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, it's about validating the feeling for being there, right?
Yes,
Rather
yes.
than, invalidating. But you have a right to be here. And then, thank you for hearing me and seeing me. Children want that, don't they?
Exactly. Can I just jump onto that just for a second? I realized that in my drive to be perfect and to get it all right and clean up my shadow and all of that kind of thing, that my greatest healing, I think, has come in recognizing there was a part of me that finally just stopped chasing perfection and just stood still and said, dadgummit, I make space for other people in my life. They can make space for me. And I'm just not gonna clean it all up. You know?
Acceptance.
Exactly,
Acceptance.
right. It came up as anger. That's another reason why I know I'm a 1. But it came up as anger, but then I just settled into it and found that I could also find compassion, right? And that I could see that the heart that I had been practicing opening for other people could apply to me.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.